how, if somebody is in our country illegally and commits a crime, are you going to put them in jail if you believe this about immigration?
Senator, I can assure you, were I so fortunate to be confirmed, I would treat crimes
That's not
seriously.
what this letter says, Professor, and it was 3 years ago. Wasn't when you were in law school, and you didn't turn it over to us. We had to find it on our own.
Senator John Kennedy dismantles a judicial nominee's credibility in one of the most intense confirmation hearing exchanges ever recorded. The law professor claimed she couldn't remember signing a letter calling for mass prisoner releases, halting all arrests, and blocking ICE transfers, but Kennedy had receipts. Watch as the nominee's defense crumbles under relentless questioning about a document she never disclosed to the committee, but was easily found with a simple Google search. This is what happens when radical activism meets Senate oversight. This hearing exposed how nominees try to hide their most controversial positions and why thorough vetting matters. Senator Kennedy proved that a senator who does his homework can uncover what others hope stays buried. Let's dive into the main video.
Professor, I'm looking at a letter dated March 16, 2020. It's a letter to Governor Lamont in Connecticut. The title of it is Urgent Action Needed to Protect Individuals in Connecticut's Prisons and Jails from Coronavirus 19 Pandemic. Did you sign that letter?
So I don't recall sitting here today, Senator.
Here's your signature. Here it is back here. Why didn't you turn this over to us when you were asked to submit documents?
So, Senator, I made every effort to search for everything that I had ever signed. That's not a letter I remember, but I will certainly take a look at that. And
We found it just with a search on the internet.
so I apologize, Senator. I apologize.
In
that
your
I missed
letter to
that.
the governor, here's what you say. As they stand, prisons and jails are detrimental to public health and human rights and disproportionately harm marginalized communities, including Black, Brown, Indigenous, and other communities of color, immigrants, people with mental illness, people with disabilities, people in the LGBTQ plus community, people who use drugs, people engaged in sex work and street economies, and people experiencing houselessness and poverty. So if you believe that about our prisons, how are you going to ever send somebody to prison?
So, Senator, I will need to take a look at that letter, and I apologize that that's not something I found to hand to this committee.
You're not denying you said that.
I do need to see the letter to see the context, because again, it's not something I remember adding my name to. Yeah. I can assure you, right. Senator.
And you also say, first, you call on Governor Lamont to release everybody in jail. Is that right? Because of the coronavirus?
So again, Senator, I would need to see that letter in front of me. It certainly was not.
You can find it just put your name into Google. You'll find it in about 3 nanoseconds.
I will, Senator. I can assure you that
You said in your letter, Professor, we call on Governor Lamont, state of Connecticut, and all Connecticut jurisdictions to immediate release to the maximum extent possible people incarcerated pre-trial and post-conviction. And then you go on to say, talking once again about our jails, the global COVID-19 pandemic is throwing into sharp relief the untenable state of our penal system and the need for sustained action to shrink its scale, shrink its size, and shrink its scope. You sound here like the district attorney in San Francisco. If you believe that, how are you going to ever send us anybody to jail, Professor?
I can assure you, Senator, that I understand the role of the judge, and that I can assure you prison time is an appropriate sentence in many cases.
That's not what you say here to the governor. You wrote the governor. This isn't some DoorDash delivery guy. You wrote the governor of your state 3 years ago.
So again, Senator,
in law school.
So again, Senator, I would need to look at the letter. It sounds like it was written at the height of the pandemic, where governors were looking for
you also wrote the governor, you said people over the age of 55 are at the greatest risk for COVID-19, but also pose the least public safety risk to our communities. People in this age group can and should be released immediately to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. You think the governor just, if you're over the age of 55, he should let everybody go?
No, Senator, that's not a position.
That's what you said.
Okay.
Here
and
it is, biggest Dallas.
Again, Senator, I will look at that letter. I can assure you that
Find it on Google, Professor. You also say Governor Lamont should issue an executive order to direct the state's attorney offices and law enforcement entities, including the town and city police departments, and any federal law enforcement entity operating within the state to immediately cease adding to the incarcerated prison population given the high risk of infection posed by the population increase. You asked the governors to tell every law enforcement official in the state to stop arresting people and putting them in jail, didn't you?
So again, Senator, I have to look at that letter. I do think there were modifications that the governors were making around the country to respond to the
You also
pandemic.
had an opinion in your letter about, can I have another 30 seconds, Mr. You had an opinion in your letter about immigration. You said immigration detention poses the same health risks to jails and prisons, and Connecticut law enforcement must stop feeding people into the unsafe and inhumane immigration detention system. Then you say Governor Lamont should release all individuals currently in state custody who are awaiting transfer to ICE custody, and the governor should declare a moratorium on all such future transfers. How, if somebody is in our country illegally and commits a crime, are you going to put them in jail if you believe this about immigration?
Senator, I can assure you, were I so fortunate to be confirmed, I would treat crimes
That's not
seriously.
what this letter says, Professor, and it was 3 years ago. Wasn't when you were in law school, and you didn't turn it over to us. We had to find it on our own.
The chair finally intervened, noting that Kennedy had been generous with time, but the damage was done, and rightfully so. In a matter of minutes, Senator John Kennedy had performed a masterclass in constitutional oversight, demonstrating exactly why the Senate's advice and consent role is so critical to our republic. Using nothing more than the nominee's own words and basic internet research that she apparently failed to conduct, Kennedy exposed what could have been a catastrophic appointment to the federal bench. The letter revealed someone fundamentally unsuited for the judiciary, someone who viewed the criminal justice system not as a mechanism for justice, but as an oppressive institution that needed to be dismantled from within. Kennedy didn't rely on gotcha questions or partisan attacks. He simply read her own words back to her, words calling for mass releases of prisoners, a complete halt to arrests across an entire state, and the obstruction of federal immigration enforcement. These weren't the moderate, thoughtful positions of someone capable of impartial judgment. These were the radical demands of an activist seeking power. The nominee's performance under questioning was equally damning. Her repeated claims that she couldn't remember signing the letter, despite it being publicly available online, raised serious questions about either her honesty or her competence. If she truly forgot advocating for such sweeping changes to criminal justice policy just 3 years ago, how can Americans trust her memory and judgment on the bench? If she remembered but chose not to disclose it, that's even worse, suggesting a deliberate attempt to conceal her radical views from scrutiny. Senator Kennedy did what too few senators do. He actually prepared. While other confirmation hearings devolve into partisan theater, Kennedy brought receipts. He didn't accept the nominee's evasions or her convenient memory lapses. He held her accountable for her own public record, forcing her to confront positions she had taken that directly contradicted the impartiality required of a federal judge. This is representative democracy at its finest. He asked the questions the American people would ask if they had the chance. He didn't let the nominee hide behind vague assurances that she understood the role of a judge. He made her defend specific, extreme positions she had advocated for, in writing. The implications of this hearing extend far beyond one nomination. Kennedy sent a clear message to future nominees. Your public record matters. Your disclosed views will be scrutinized, and senators who do their homework will find what you hope to hide. He reminded the legal academy that advocacy is not the same as judiceship, and that a history of pushing radical criminal justice reform disqualifies you from claiming the impartiality necessary for the bench. Whether this nomination ultimately fails or not, Senator Kennedy has already succeeded in his most important duty. He exposed the truth, protected the integrity of the judiciary, and demonstrated to the American people that at least some senators take their constitutional responsibilities seriously.